started and maybe a few more will join us, but hello y'all. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Melissa Green and I am the co-founder and have the privilege of leading this community and space called Imaginarium. We gather like this twice a month on Sunday afternoons from 4 to 5:15-ish. And we come together to remind ourselves of our values, which at Imaginarium, our values are the belief in the inherent worth, what we call magic, of every living being and every living thing. So not only our human family and ourselves, but also this natural world around us. Second, our second value is the belief in our inherent connection then to each other, to the human family as a whole, and to the natural world around us. And finally, our belief in inherent responsibility then, asking not for us to tell each other what your responsibility is, but more challenging all of us every day, saying, I do have a responsibility to myself, to each other, and to the world around me today, and how am I living into that? So inherent magic, connection, and responsibility. So while we gather, not only do we have the privilege of having special guests like we do today, Mr. Eric Brown is with us, but we had 3 years ago decided we wanted to do things. We believe that ritual is meaningful. And for so many of us, we are not a part of any other larger community that meets regularly. Some of us have come out of churches. Others of us have never been involved in religious spaces at all. But we all, I think, deeply believe in the power and intentionality of ritual. So we have spiritual practices that we do here at Imaginarium, and we always start our gatherings with those. So our first practice is what we call our naming practice, and it's simply an opportunity for a couple things. One, to introduce or reintroduce ourselves to each other and to anybody new coming in and out of this space. But two, as you introduce yourself, and we would love it if you would share your name, where you're tuning in from, and your preferred pronouns. But also as you're doing that, we're asking that you remind yourself to take up your space, not only in this conversation and for this hour, but also ultimately in the world. And it's a reminder for some of us that we often take up too much space and back up a little bit and just take up enough of our space. And for others of us, it's a gentle reminder to fill up your space, to use your voice, to insert your opinion, to join the conversation. And so this is that practice. I'll just name us as we go, which feels a little redundant. There's no easy way to do it on Zoom, so we always do it like this. So I'll start with Cindy.
Cindy Hoppus, I'm in Spring Hill, Tennessee, she, her.
Lovely. And again, I'm Melissa Green, she, her, hers, from Franklin, Tennessee. Hausers.
Hey, Chris Hauser from Brentwood, he, him.
Linda Hauser, also from Brentwood. I don't have a preference.
Lovely, glad you're here. Nathan.
Nathan Johns from Lebanon, and he, him, his.
Lovely, thanks Nathan. He's also our technical person in residence as always. So thankful for your work, Nathan. Abby Buter.
I'm Abby, she, her, and I am in Tacoma, Washington.
Yay, so glad you're with us. Malia.
Malia Carden, Brentwood, Tennessee, she, her, hers.
Lovely. Thanks, Malia. Dougie.
Hi, everybody. Doug Day, Franklin, Tennessee. He, him, his.
Yay, so glad you're here, Doug. Matt.
Hey, guys. I'm Matt, Huntington, West Virginia. He, him, his.
Lovely. Eric. An official one will come later too, but Eric.
Hello, everybody. Eric Brown from Nashville, Tennessee. He, him, his.
Lovely. Glad you're with us, Eric. And Leah.
Hi, I'm Leah. I'm here in East Nashville, and I use she, her pronouns.
Lovely. Thanks, Leah. We lost someone that was with us. Hopefully she will make her way back. And if she does, or anybody else new comes in, we will introduce them. Or let them introduce themselves. Okay, lovely. As all of you, or most of you know, we value participation here, and that's why we're challenging some of us to use our voice in ways that maybe you're not comfortable with. But our next participatory practice, Nathan's gonna lead us in.
Yeah, so we like each week to try to name the good in the world. There's so much happening around us with the COVID and the election and all, just everything. So, but if there are good things too, we would like to call those out. And so it comes along with a theme song, which I will offer for you. And if you're welcome to unmute and join me if you would like. It goes a little bit something like this. Tell me something good.
Yes.
All right. So glad no one joined me. That's awesome. But if you do have something good to offer, please, raise your hand and let us know.
I just want to say that was good that it sounded so like deep in country, a country version. Really appreciated it.
Well, very good, I guess.
I'll share something.
Yeah.
Two things actually. As most of you know, I moved from Nashville in the spring, and the reason I moved out to Washington was to be by family. And so my nephew turned 6 tomorrow. So it's just like a good day of feeling like, okay, this is why I'm here. This is like being able to be in person and celebrate his birthday is really, really special. And also I went and looked at an apartment today. So I did the application, and it's mine to rent. So I just feel like finally things are like happening, like got a job now. So I'm really excited about it all just kind of working out. And it's like everything that I wanted in an apartment. So it's just like, it's all exactly what I wanted and was hoping for. So I'm very excited after long, long time of waiting. So good news for me.
It's amazing. Leah?
This is kind of small, but I just talked on the phone with a friend that I haven't talked to in a while. And it was just really good combination of like sharing things that we've both been like, didn't realize we needed to emotionally process, but we're able to talk about with someone, but then also just like laughing about stuff. And I don't know, it just feels good both to connect with someone emotionally like that, but also just to laugh, because laughing is wonderful.
Awesome.
Oh.
I'm waving hello.
Okay.
Our son Christopher's 32 years old, lives in East Nashville, and he's been offering to get together with me recently. And so we've spent almost entire Sundays together in the last month, two different times. Last Sunday was one, and he's, as I said, 32, and we're American family who's had some bumps and bruises along the way, emotional, not physical, but very thankful that Christopher, as an adult, wants to hang out with me, and he's done so. He's made a big difference for both of us. He was our firstborn, and so I'm just super thankful for the time together with him. Thanks.
I have one. We were waiting to announce officially. I was hoping Lauren would be on today, and she's not. She's thinking next time she'll be there. But Lauren, who's one of our lead team members that most of you know, that she had her baby earlier this month, Wilder Scott, and we posted it on the Instagram page, but just in case, can you see her? Wilder Scott. She's so cute, and they're doing great, and already having, the typical ups and downs of having a newborn in the house and the drastic change that a child makes, but they're doing really well. And so if you haven't already, please wish them well if you have access to them online or in person.
We have one.
Yay.
Rivian has their first tooth coming in. It's not very good news for them, but it will be good news when they can eat things. Yay!
They're getting so big.
Malia?
I'm gonna go on a date with my husband tonight to Cheekwood. So I will be ducking out a little bit early, but it's been hard to with all the things with with COVID and just our life changing with my new job and everything, it's been hard to find time together. So I'm looking forward to that.
Are you going to the Chihuly exhibit?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Part 2 on our something good. Go ahead.
Friday afternoon, kind of on a whim, we decided to go to Cheekwood to see the Chihuly, and did not recognize until after we'd purchased tickets that there was a 47% chance of rain. And we got there and thought we were getting there at like just the right time. We went early so that we could actually see them kind of coming to life, having seen them during the day and then coming to life. And so we were told that we should do the mansion first because it was closing early. So we went inside and spent the whole time in the mansion, came out about an hour later, saw 2 of the exhibits, and it started to sprinkle. We went and took shelter in, I don't know what this thing is. It's like this lit dome. It has nothing to do with Chihuly. It's there all the time. We went inside and we spent probably an hour in there. Only our legs got wet. And then we decided to brave it. We had brought umbrellas. And basically what I remember of the time was looking at the steps, because I was trying to very carefully maneuver all of these wet stone steps. and
In the
yet
dark.
we actually had this really good time. It just made it really special and unique. But we will be going back to actually see the Chihuly stuff at some point.
Yeah. Times in the past, I'm telling you, we would be so mad and feel so ripped off. But as we continue to evolve as people, we're like, this is what it is. And so how do we be in the moment?
Yeah. Especially me. I used to go into a dark hole very, very quickly. And instead it was just a joyful time for all of us. So the good is, it was fun. The good is also, wow, changing. Life can be good. This is wonderful.
Yep.
That's awesome. Anyone else? Well, before I pass it off to Malia to do our land exercise, I wanted to give Molly and Giorgio an opportunity to introduce themselves, tell us where they're from, and give their pronouns. You're on mute, Molly.
Molly, she, her. This is Rivian, they, them. And I am Giorgio, he, him.
And we're in Nashville in the 12 South area.
Awesome. All right, Malia, you want to take it away?
Hold on.
That dog.
He's dealing with the dog. My 80-pound German Shepherd who thinks he's a lap dog. All right, where is my... I don't know what he just did to my computer.
Oh no. Well, while you're finding that, I'll remind us that we, as a part of our practices and spiritual practices, we've chosen to do acknowledgements of the land and an anti-racism acknowledgement. And we feel like we'll continue to add to those as we better understand and our perspective continues to expand and grow. But this is where we started.
All right, I'm ready. Okay, I have the land acknowledgement. And since Imaginarium is founded in Middle Tennessee, I'm acknowledging for the Middle Tennessee area. So we acknowledge the land we are meeting on today is the original homeland of the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Shawnee, and Yuchi tribal nations. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced removal from this territory, and we honor and respect the many diverse indigenous peoples still connected to this land in which we gather.
Lovely. Thank you, Malia. CC?
Yes, I'm reading our statement. We as a community recognize that white supremacy and systemic racism are an insidious part of our world. Intentional or not, we recognize the harmful impact of its presence in our lives and the many ways in which it impacts the Black, Indigenous, and people of color members of this community and other communities around us. We commit ourselves to an active practice of anti-racism. We commit to rooting out and addressing racism whenever and wherever we find it, starting within each of us, but extending into our communities and the greater world around us.
Indeed. Thank you, CC. And finally, Leah.
Hey, y'all. So our last practice that we do is an embodiment practice. Just take a moment to settle into the current moment and get in touch with our physical bodies. So what we do is we put our hands together like this, and starting with your thumb, we're going to one at a time say stop, breathe, know your worth. Okay, let's do it all together a few times. Stop, breathe, know your worth. One more time. Stop, breathe, know your worth.
Beautiful. Thank you, Leah. I had the privilege a couple weeks ago, and I posted about it on Instagram if any of you follow me. A lot of you do. And but to join forces with Angel Adams, who's been on here multiple times, especially early in COVID. She was a part of our gatherings. And Brother Shabazz, who many of us met last year at Winter Song. He represented the Kwanzaa story and the dancers that night. But I had no idea he was involved in this, but Angel asked me to get involved in what a movement they're calling street dance activism. And that's a movement, I think it's based out of originally Chicago, but they're Angel and Shabazz are basically opening a chapter here. But we met at Fisk University, and they passed out t-shirts, and they'd made masks for everyone that was involving themselves with a flower like tied to it to own our connection to the natural world around us. And then they had percussionists and musicians there, and basically led us in an hour, maybe 45 minutes of things similar to what we just did. Those practices. And then at one point they did a ton of breath work and had multiple people. They kept passing the mic to different community leaders, which was so moving and a beautiful example of what we're trying to do here and ways we're trying to follow that great shared leadership. But I had the honor of doing a breath work once we moved into the community, like we redid everything once we sang and danced through the streets, which was lovely in and of itself, because people would just come out of their front doors and start dancing and singing with us, which was just really joyful. But I had the opportunity to do Stop, Breathe, Know Your Worth. And then I added on to it with a little stop, breathe, know our connection, feel our connection, and stop, breathe. How did I put it? I don't remember how I did it, but something about responsibility ultimately. But I loved and they loved it, and the kids loved it. And I just loved another opportunity to sort of share what we're doing and fold into that community and what they're already doing. But hopefully there will be more opportunities for us to join us, because I feel like you all would love it. I also feel like it would be a beautiful place for any of you that were a part of what we do at Nashville Pride on the ground. I think we could do the color dusting experience as a part of that too, hopefully soon. So just more will be coming on that later. But today, to continue in the spirit of dialogue and participation, we are so honored that Eric Brown is with us. I met Eric, I was thinking, Eric, I guess it was 4 years ago, when he was serving on the Nashville Pride board, and he was charged with leading up spirituality night. And I think someone recommended that I could be a help to him. So he tagged me in to help, and that's how he and I first met and first started working together. And then I think we did it again the next year, and I also served on the board. And then we had a few lunches together discussing life and religion and lots of things, so I've asked him earlier this year, I'd love to bring you in and have you speak. And then he's just put out a new book called Weekend Reflections, which we're going to talk about. And so I was like, oh, this is a perfect time to have you in and to have you share a little bit about your story and the book and all that's going on. So first of all, just welcome. We're so honored to have you in this space with us. And by way of are you actually from Nashville, Eric?
I'm actually from Nashville. I moved during high school, but came back. Yes.
Oh, okay. So a born and raised Nashvilleian, which is, those are few and far between, right? These days, most people migrate here or leave and don't come back. So give us a little bit just initially about sort of your background, your family background, and did you grow up in religious spaces? I mean, I know some of these things, but no one else does. Let's start
Sure.
there.
So good afternoon to everybody. Definitely glad for the invitation and to be able to participate with you all. My name is Eric Brown. I am originally from Nashville, Tennessee, Woodbine area to be exact. As far as religion, my background is I used to be a minister for about 15 years. My family is pretty much what I call with my family's preaching and ministering is the family business. So I was a fifth generation Baptist minister within that. So religion is definitely very strong in my family. As far as the rest of my background, right now I'm in politics. I work in Metro Nashville government. Before then, I was a community organizer. Did a lot of work around children's rights. Before entering into politics, was working in environmental justice rights. And then I've also did a lot of stuff around prison reform, prison advocacy for those who are on the inside around that piece. And did a little bit of faith organizing as well, which though it's called faith organizing, what I would probably say is just people that have their spirituality, their faith, and they believe in justice. And from that, they just make sure that the values and the faith that they have is actually what pushes them and enacts them to do, for some, the work of God on earth through the works of justice. So I'll say I will start with that as far as themes. When Melissa goes a little deeper, I'll tell those stories as well.
And that, I mean, all of that is also exactly why I knew you would resonate so deeply with the things that we've talked about here and so many of us. I remember the first time we sat down at lunch at pizza, and I think I was on my way out of the church and you had been out of the church for a while, but also interviewing for a position, possibly to pastor. I forget what church it was, 12th Street or
Jefferson Street Missionary Baptist Church with Pastor Evan James Tex Thomas.
Yeah, I just felt like we were crossing and weaving in lots of the same spaces. So I'm really interested. Let's back up just for a second. So you went to school to ABC, right?
Yes, so I started, well, if we're going to tell the real story, it took me about 7 years to get my bachelor degree. I actually started at Middle Tennessee State University, was going to go into recording engineering, was very fond of the music business, was producing music and dancing and things of that nature, and thought that was the way. And then around the time of 9/11, when those towers came crashing down, I really started feeling the call of ministry during that time, which was a very scary time because definitely when those towers fell, a lot of questions went for me, and I was 18 years old, just turned 18 years old. And I was definitely hearing conversations from people saying that God did this to destroy the sinfulness that was going on in New York City. And that always never really sat well with me. But at the time, I didn't really have the knowledge to understand what that meant. But I just knew inside of me that just didn't feel right. And then around that same time, I got called to preach, which is even weirder when you're an 18-year-old kid that barely knows anything about life. You're really not even a man yet. And somebody's already looking at you as if you're 45 years old and can teach them about life, when reality is I know nothing about life. And so I left MTSU to go to a school called Tennessee Temple University in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which was a fundamentalist white independent Baptist church that also had a university connected to it. And it was weird for me, especially with me telling you that I'm a fifth generation minister, that my parents were not really that strict. And so going to a school to where even with us being in these nice little windows on our internet is too close if you're of the opposite sex, and you would get punished for things of that nature. You couldn't dress a certain way. Just the fact that I have facial hair would have got me in trouble, or the fact that I have hair at all would have got me in trouble. And I really definitely understood religious racism very quickly, going to this place to where it was almost as if there was a hierarchy. So though I was considered saved and baptized and filled with the Holy Spirit, my race was still looked down as that. The only thing that really saved me was the fact that I was saved. And those came up where they talk about things like the Curse of Cain, to where most people may not have understood that type of language, but I definitely did understand the Curse of Cain and what that meant, of pretty much saying that Noah's sons was cursed, and therefore he was made black because he was cursed by God. And so this was a lot of the language that was sometimes used at this place, or getting hit with, I guess you could say, backhanded compliments of, it's just good to see you black kids here at this school getting an education. You could be out there doing other things. And so I got very depressed during this time. I found out because I was a psychology major at this school, and started looking at the clinical description and said, hey, I'm actually depressed. Stayed there for about maybe 2.5 years, to where I left and went to American Baptist College, which is actually the school that my parents went to. And so going to American Baptist College, I actually dropped out after the first semester to end up welding car frames, so where I really saw injustice of people not getting vacation time or sick time. You got occurrences, and occurrences was pretty much demerits. You only got 5 demerits, and you can only use them for if you needed to miss a day. If your kid got sick, you'd take a demerit. If you actually got in trouble, you got a demerit. But if you had 5 demerits within that year, you lost your job. With a job that even in the early 2000s, it was maybe $300 a week. And for maybe a kid like me that was 20 at the time, that sounds good. But for somebody that has a family of 3 or 4, that was the issue. And so as you can see right now, all these different elements were coming up in my life that really makes me think about faith very differently. And this happened at American Baptist College, where I started understanding community organizing, understanding the history of American Baptist College, of where you had a student named John Lewis that went there along with Bernard Lafayette, C.T. Vivian. And so just kind of knowing that history of justice really made me proud to be a student of American Baptist College. Left there, went to Vanderbilt Divinity School, to where I got my master's in theological studies, and then still stayed at Vanderbilt and got a master's of arts in ethics and society. Sorry, I took the long way of that one, but
no, I love it. We love hearing all of it. So for people that don't know, ABC is a historical Black college, correct? And right here in Nashville. Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing.
The banks of the Cumberland River.
And I had no idea until I read the book that John Lewis, though, that's where he went. And you have to read the book to figure out. I don't know if that's what you're sharing today. He's going to do a reading for us too, but in the book he shares, and to stop right now, we're giving you sort of a glimpse of what the book is ultimately, because this book is almost like him journaling day to day. You started it first on social media, right? And then decided to put it in print form, but he's sort of taking his day-to-day and what's actually happening, how he's reflecting on current events or reflecting on his own past or his experience as a Black man in the South specifically, and all of the influences that go along. And so we're sort of getting a taste of it as we hear parts of his story, but he's also going to do some readings for us as well. Okay, so that makes sense now, why you've had all these influences and why you sort of have your hands in a lot of different areas, or have. Let's jump back. So explain a little bit about what your work in community organizing has looked like here in Nashville, and are you still involved in some way?
Sorry if y'all hear the dogs in the background. I'm sure they're attacking some squirrel or something, so I apologize. You asked me about my work, correct?
Yeah, and community organizing specifically. What was that work before, and are you still involved in some way now?
Good question. So the way I got started in community organizing was actually from a professor named Dr. Janet Wolf that actually works for the Children's Defense Fund now, but she was a professor of mine at American Baptist College. And she came during the time that I was actually working full-time welding car frames at night for a subcontractor of Nissan, and full-time going to school at American Baptist College. And so I kind of told you about some of the injustice that was going on at this job. And she kind of comes in, she starts talking about justice and asking, what gifts do you bring to class? And of course, I just told you I got off of a 12-hour shift, came into a 8:00 a.m. class, and she asked me, what gift do you bring to class? I said, the gift of tiredness. I really don't want to be here. I really would like to go to sleep, but because this is class and I would like to get this degree, let's go ahead and do this. She ended up becoming who I call my second mother. And she definitely taught me more about civil rights movement from a deeper lens. It's one thing to hear about civil rights movement as far as Martin Luther King, we shall overcome, yada, yada, yada. But it's a different thing to actually understand that many of these people that were fighting for justice were actually my age at the time, and probably even possibly younger. And I still didn't necessarily make the connection. I really liked her. And I like to read. So I read that, but the connection hit when I went on a conference to Memphis, Tennessee, to where her mentor, Dr. James Lawson, was there, and he was telling us about the work that he did, specifically with Dr. Martin Luther King. Also, him being the chief strategist of the nonviolence movement here in Nashville, Tennessee, for the sit-ins. And a woman named Alexia Salvatierra, Reverend Alexia Salvatierra, actually started telling stories, and she talked about Nissan in Mississippi and how they were organizing. She talked about the injustices. It finally clicked. when she said that statement. And so I jumped up out of my seat. I started asking these questions. I started saying, yeah, this was going on in Smyrna, Tennessee, with a lot of the workers, how they divide people based on race, how people are not really getting the justice they need or not actually even getting paid what they deserve. And all this world kicked into me to where I started connecting with Mid-South Interfaith Justice Network with a woman named Reverend Rebecca Wolf. And I started doing organizing work at Vanderbilt University for the dining workers at the school. From there, a situation happened in Jena, Louisiana. I think they call it Jena 6, to where a young man, I believe his name was Michael Bell, got into a fight, or 5 or 6 of them got into a fight with a white kid there because somebody put nooses in the lynching tree. I forgot what the tree was called. I think they actually called it the nigger tree. And they were actually being convicted of attempted murder for the fight that happened in high school. And so I helped organize with 4 or 5 other people here in Tennessee, about 6 to 7 different buses around the state of Tennessee. And actually that broke my heart going down there to Jena, Louisiana. I'm not going to say names because y'all know these people, but I would see literally pastors give these big, bold speeches nationally, talking about, oh, let's do this. And so then people would start marching, and I would see those same pastors jump into limousines and drive off while everybody else was marching. And I saw some other things of which really threw me off from organizing, to where I thought, organizing was this rosy colored way of doing things as far as justice. And what I realized is that there's a lot of people that's within the justice world that is there just to make a check and going about their business, which is why I quit for a minute, which is actually why I went to Vanderbilt Divinity School, because I wanted to learn more about it and also teach it, and just kind of give up on the organizing world. But again, Reverend Wolf, or Dr. Janet Wolf, would not allow me to do that. And she asked me to work for Children's Defense Fund, to where 3 of us went to DC to do a teach-in for Marion Wright Edelman, the executive director at the time of Children's Defense Fund. And we talked about being young Black males and what that means as far as the prison system, to where she hired us on the spot. And so then I was working in high schools, teaching kids about organizing, and also talking about their own stories as far as trauma, being Black kids. Also going into the prison system of Riverbend Maximum Security Prison, talking to gentlemen on units 4, units 5. 5 is the mental illness or mental health facility, and also unit 6, which is the death row side. And so we talked about a bunch of things, to where we actually made linkage and connections between a lot of the stories of those gentlemen that was on death row, and they wrote stories to those that were in high school, and the high schoolers actually wrote back and forth. And while this was going on, my pastor actually got sick, to where I ended up having to be the assistant pastor at the time while he was sick. He had a stroke, and it was some effects that happened to him in a car wreck when he was a kid, and was doing the Children's Defense Fund while still going into the prison system and the high school system, and also taking over the duties of the church. I'll stop right there. Do I still do community organizing? I say I do, but in a very subversive way, which is being an inside organizer within politics is probably the best way to say it.
I love all that. I want to hear more about that, but I have 2 things. One, Alexia Salvatore, she wrote Faith-Rooted Organizing, right? Does that sound familiar?
Yes, I believe that's the book, yes.
So co-authored that. That's a great resource that I think you all would enjoy, and we can share it in the chat or on the group page later. Second, I'm very interested, as you all are hearing probably for the first time, sort of how his hands have been in so many different places, and his work has been in so many different places. And we've talked about this before in light of seeing injustice play out in so many places. I'm interested how you now, fast forwarding, and I know we'll get back to why you're in politics and specifically the book, but I'm really interested on how you choose when to invest your time and energy in something. Because again, you just named a slew of different things, and they're all needed. Like, the work was needed in all those places. And again, we talk about it a lot around here. At times people feel like we're tripping up on how to begin because it all feels overwhelming. So how do you choose, how do you make those choices?
You kind of just said it. I get very overwhelmed by something that's probably made me very angry and probably triggered me from a traumatic experience in my life, to where I have to make a decision. Do I get real pissed off about it, get angry and lash out internally, which helps nobody? Or do I get over myself and say, if this is bothering me this badly, then why don't I do something about it? And that's kind of how a lot of these things have happened. Within politics, it was kind of a very weird situation because one, I just recently left the church. I did not have a job, but there was a lot of things politically that was going on that I definitely had issues with. And it was an opportunity, one, to get a job within it. But the second part was it was actually a different mode or a different medium to be able to do the work that I thought I was able to do within ministry. Is how I got into that. And so I literally was not able to work, did not work in the church no more, took on 3 jobs to where I made less than $30,000 that year. One was working at American Baptist College as a professor, well, not a professor, as a administrator to help them to get a grant, $1 million grant from the Lilly Foundation. And that was for a summer, maybe 3 or 4 months. One was working and making pizzas at a place called Sim & Husky's Pizzeria, where I was actually one of their original employees. And the other one was driving a Lyft, and did that for a while, especially while my wife was still in school during that time. And it was rough, but to be honest, looking back at it, was a very happy time for me because I knew at least I had my wife. But it was a traumatic time because I had a lot of church hurt, especially at a time where I thought I was going to be pastor. Was not really sure about my thoughts or views on God. And at the same time, still understood the experiences that was going on in my particular community of North Nashville. Still seeing joblessness, still seeing a lot of poverty, seeing gentrification happen during that time, seeing a lot of drugs and prostitution, and also seeing kids getting killed during that time. And so I knew that as much as I wanted to get away from the justice world and actually make money, something still calls you back. And so my way of staying in politics is actually to understand how policy affects things and impacts things. And if it wasn't for the fact that maybe me being a Black man in that particular position, to give a different view, might just be the one instance to where something changes and is actually beneficial to other people. So though I would say I'm out of organizing, the real truth is that the mission and values that I still have inside of me, I just transferred them into the political world. Hope I answered your question, because I think I just went on the lynches for no reason.
Oh, I think that's great. And I feel, honestly, just as a reflection, I feel so challenged because I definitely think the mission and values that you carry seems like they lead you into all these different places. And I'm interested, so many of us grew up with the idea, like, this is, you need to figure out who you're going to be. And I talk about this a lot with my kids now. Like, you need to figure out who you're going to be, and then you go to school for it, and then you do that for the next 40, 50 years of your life. Right. And times have changed so much, right? That isn't necessarily the best plan for all, but also in light of the type of work that you're involved in and I'm involved in, it's also like you have to continue to adapt and adjust as the world changes. And so versus deciding what you want to get into next, what has been the thing that's told you to move on before? Do you feel a sense of like your work in this specific thing is complete? And or has it been unfortunate, toxic circumstances that have made you move on from lots of these different things and onto something else?
It's probably been more, it's probably actually been, Melissa, more, I don't really want to say toxic. I want to say probably lessons. During the time, it probably was something that was very toxic and hurtful. But the reality is if that situation didn't happen, would I've actually had the courage to move on. So me leaving ministry, well, it's hurtful, especially when you're a 5th generational minister, right? And I guess just to tell the story of what actually happened, my pastor was retiring from the church. He actually called me to be the assistant pastor during that time that he thought he was going to die, to take over for him, but also kind of leveraged me to become the pastor of the church. But I've been in the church world forever. And I think me and Melissa have talked about this plenty of times. I've been in the church world forever. I was a preacher's kid. And I think that's a different experience that sometimes it's easy for people to say, the preacher's kids are probably the worst kids, but I think people forget the part that the preacher's kid sees everything. We see our parents as human. We see how kids treat us because we're the preacher's kid. We see how adults treat us even when we're kids as being the preacher's kids. And we see what's going on in the world and how does that actually relate back and forth. So I knew that world very well. But a couple of situations happened. When my pastor left, I did not necessarily change things. I dealt with problems that nobody had really dealt with. So we cleaned up the church, made sure to go stronger with the youth programs at the church. a lot of various different things. And I remember there are certain times that where I ended up, getting phone calls 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to go to psychiatric ward to the hospital. And one of the kids that I knew and I loved very dearly almost tried to kill herself. And the reality was what was going on was she was coming out about her sexuality, and her parents could not take that. Grandmama loved her. There was never an issue with her grandmother, but the parents had an issue. One was a stepfather. I do not want to say his name, but he was in the news about a couple of weeks ago for something very harsh that you do to kids. But he was pretty much leading that family, telling them that, it was a sin. It was a sin for her to be 15 years old and to be a lesbian. And the mother, because she wanted to hold on to him as a husband, denied her kid. And the kid tried to take her life. What the kid did not realize is that while we and her were having this conversation, and she didn't necessarily think that I understood her being in that psychiatric ward, not her sexuality, but that psychiatric ward, she felt very embarrassed. I had to tell her story that I was also in the same psychiatric ward about maybe 4 to 5 years before her. I gave her the story and told her there's nothing to be ashamed of, that this is a part of life that I also understood and I loved. And that she also had somebody else that understood her hurt and her love, and could be there with her. And we had a pretty close relationship as far as her understanding that she was not alone, to think that she was crazy or that she was embarrassed, but that we all have our particular lessons that we learn that makes us stronger and grow. And so it was good to have that, but at the same time, while all that was going on, I did my interview with the church as far as me and the pastor, to where they asked me a question that I don't think they liked my answer. And, the question was, would I marry a same-sex couple? Of course, that's a routine question where you're supposed to say no. And I quickly said, yes, I would. And one of the gentlemen that's known me since a kid asked me the question and said, you would do what? And I answered the question and said, yes, I would. I didn't make it too much further in the pastoral process, and that broke my heart, because these are people that have known me since I was kids. They also have known me as an adult, and they told me I was doing a great job, but I didn't fit the culture that they expected of me, and I was hurt for that. I thought I lost my purpose for a long time within that church, but as another pastor, his name is Pastor Daryl Drumright of Temple Church in Nashville, said something about, Eric, you was willing to shrink yourself and be small so that church could be big. And that was not God's purpose for your life. So it's probably the best thing that you did not get that church. The reality is I don't go to church anymore. I'm not really sure if I believe in God at all. I definitely believe in the beloved community. And I think that if where people are and that they do something that's greater for humanity, I believe if God is real, that's where God emerges. So again, I'm not sure, and I'm over here crying in front of y'all. I apologize. But Melissa, I think I answered your question. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, and then some. Yeah, we honor your vulnerability too, and we see that as such strength. So please know that and appreciate it. Yeah, y'all, I can't wait for you to read this book. He has so many sections, which, because I know so many of your stories, and even as I was reading it, my own story, I just resonated with so much. And I think he's going to read a section, but I'm going to at least quote this if he doesn't mind. He's probably gathering himself for a second. But in one of his church sections and reflections, he says, I'm agnostic when it comes to my faith. I believe in following the person Jesus, but that is not connected to a malfunction, malnutrition, and corrupt interpretation of evangelical Christianity. It's not even connected to the misinterpreted social justice gospel, where you say you're here for the least, the lost, and the left out, while never going to those communities, staying in your privileged bubble where you can look like an angel while hovering over places of hell. So good. Eric, which section did you choose to read, or did you have one picked out?
Yeah, the one that you just read.
Oh, great. Can you read the whole thing? I think they would appreciate it. Again, so many of us, not only myself, and I, in many conversations, Eric and I had shared our church hurt and our hopes for the church and the beloved community, as he just said, and also frustration and critiques. And again, so many of the rest of us who have walked out, being a part of a church and leaving a church, and have expressed many of those same things. And so I think that, again, you're going to love this book, the whole of it, but I especially know that these people would resonate with that section specifically. So I would love for you to read it for them.
Absolutely. Can you do me a favor? Can you show that picture that's in front of that particular post? Because I'm not sure if it'll show up on mine. So another thing about this book, what I call it, is a children's book for adults. I know as a kid that we all love pictures, and it actually helped us to visualize our thoughts. I thought I'd do the same thing as an adult, for us to sometimes, we can forget that we were children one times, or we can kind of forget about the joyfulness and the childishness that we did have, that we sometimes take away the good joys, because it means that if we take away that, it means we're adults now. And I think sometimes we need to go back to our youthfulness. So there's a bunch of pictures in this book. So if you don't like to read, hopefully you like the pictures. I'll go ahead and read this. This year, my plans were altered about how I was to live my life. I thought I was supposed to pastor. I thought I was supposed to be in a church as a leader, as the leader. I thought God told me to do that. I thought God told me to do it so much that I put other things to the side and almost jeopardized my wealth I had and called it faith. Those who knew me know I'm level-headed. I'm not so heavenly minded that I'm no earthly good. I still believe in facts and evidence. I actually don't like thinking in a churchy or spiritualized manner because it makes me feel I have no control. This is probably true anyhow. Either way, that wasn't the mode of how my purpose is supposed to play out. I thought that dream would happen at a specific place with a specific title, and this would help a specific community. I thought those that I would wake up for at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. to see at the hospital or in their homes would usher in that reign. But that did not happen. I could tell you about being stabbed in the back, lied on, and feeling much heartache, trauma, and pain from the experience. What I know is that I was wrong about thinking that decision or risk would be real, that I placed too much trust in people I loved who did not love me, and that I must pick up the pieces, let go of those expectations, and move forward in growth. Run-on sentence, SUNY. I know it's hard to be wrong, to have thought wrong, and maybe even believed wrong. I have to let those words settle in my body. I was wrong in this thought for 2 years. I planned around that error-filled thought. I put my dreams on hold for that thought. I tried to make that thought my purpose. In fact, I made that thought my purpose and attached it to God or a higher being. I want to tell myself that I truly felt that decision was made by something higher than myself on my behalf. But that is not true. I fooled myself into adapting a belief and trying to align with it. This is the second time in my life where I'm not sure what I believe when it comes to faith or spirituality. I'll say the word out loud. I am agnostic when it comes to my faith. I believe in following the person Jesus, but that is not connected to a malfunctioned, malnutritioned, and corrupt interpretation of evangelical Christianity. It's not even connected to a misinterpreted social justice gospel where you say you are here for the least, the lost, and the left out, while never going to those communities, staying in your privileged bubble where you can look like an angel while hovering over places of hell. I fooled myself into assuming something I am not sure I believed is supposed to be my purpose. That was wrong of me, and I must grow from it. I don't say this for someone to defend their view of God or to save me. I say it because right now, that is where I am. I might move back to having hope in a religious community. I might even become a faith leader again. But right now, let me be honest and clear. I just don't know. I'm not trying to stay stuck here. I'm not trying to make this a finality. But I know that I do not know, and I know that I have to keep on moving on.
So good. Thank you, Eric. Well, y'all, I want to open this up to you all, and I'll have some closing questions for him in a few minutes. I also want to make note that in case we're missing in the chat, which is sometimes hard to keep up with, but Caleb wrote, Eric, as a queer person with a similar church experience, thank you for all of that. Talking about the story that you shared right before you shared the reading. So thank you for that. Okay, y'all, the floor is open. Questions, commentary. I know this has already, I'm sure, resonated with you, and or you're intrigued about some other things about his life and his work. And so the floor is open. Just, you can unmute yourself, and if we tend to talk over ourselves, we'll call you out. But otherwise, what you got?
I think I'm intrigued by the logo on your lower left side, the Twisted Sisters. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, wait, you're muted.
Sorry, I try not to be that person that talks over and mute, and of course I'm that person. Twisted Sisters is actually a Black winery here in Nashville. One of them is a friend. Her name is Ogechi. And they started that a couple of years ago. They're in a couple of locations here, but the logo's there because I always want to make sure to support independent business. And during the times that I was doing some of these conversations about my book, I wanted people just to know who I was attached to. One big thing that's probably a theme about this book, but also my life, is even though I might have produced something, it still comes from a community. And so I really do take it takes a village mentality. So for me to even produce this book, for me to even have these thoughts, it came from that community. And so I always want to make sure to give back and support that community. And so that's why you see the logo Twisted Sisters. So if you do drink wine, I say support them. They're doing great things. They're trying to grow. And I want to help them grow because they've helped me.
Love it. We'll also share them again on the community page too later, y'all. All right, who else? Chris Hauser.
Eric, thank you for being with us today. I'm curious if both of your parents are still alive, and how much they know about your journey out of religiosity, as it were, and how you're managing all that.
Great question. Appreciate that. Both my parents are alive and doing well. I talk to them all the time. They support me. That's what I'm appreciative of. They still support me. It's very interesting because I think I never call my parents really straight to the right when it comes to their religion. But they were my father was definitely a moderate. So he definitely may not have preached hate-filled messages, but he definitely thought about certain things that he thought was considered a sin. He thought that until after we had a conversation, I think while I was in school, to where he's not necessarily that moderate anymore. I would probably say he's very liberal in his thoughts when it comes to religion. And has preached sermons to say that. And is actually still a pastor and he's in a rural Alabama church to where he still gives those very liberal views to 70-year-old average church members, and they have an understanding of who he is and what his beliefs and thoughts are, and I'm glad that we was able to have those conversations. My dad is actually very proud of me, but still believes that I'm a preacher, and says it all the time to me, that pretty much thinks that this is the mafia. Once you're in, you're in. You can't get out. And so when we talk about things, he still thinks that it's on me. He's very proud of what I'm doing and still thinks that that's still considered ministry. And my mom's the same way. So definitely glad to have that support and that love from them, especially knowing that they are definitely Jesus lovers. But them still feeling that I'm still a part of that. Nothing's changed in their head, that I'm still that person.
Thank you. Also, I want to say, getting a psychology degree at a Christian fundamentalist college in Chattanooga is kind of blowing my mind. I mean, it feels like jumbo shrimp or military intelligence to have a psychology degree at a fundamentalist school.
You were dead on it. And you know what's actually interesting, though? That's where I actually found a lot of my refuge, because though it was a very fundamental school, the psychology department was the most liberal department of the school, and they were more understanding and well open-minded to a lot of things, even if they are, definitely fundamentalists, they still supported me and were still appreciative. And I think I was very happy that I ended up there and in that department and was not in another department to where that would not have been true. So it's funny. You're absolutely right, but they felt like misfits in that school, but really believed what they believed.
So Caleb put in the chat, he doesn't have a mic or a camera, so he typed it in, but he's asking Eric, how did you tell your parents that your religious views had drifted from theirs? I still haven't done that with my own parents, and I'm very anxious about it.
Caleb, honestly, I've always been a pretty direct person about who I am. I don't know if any of y'all have taken an Enneagram, but if you have, I'm an 8, if that tells you anything about me. And so that I'm pretty independent. I'm not going to hold back what my thoughts or beliefs are. And we've always had very strong conversations. I think my dad really instilled that into me. So I don't think there was a moment where I had to tell him this is what I believe. And he may not, my dad, and I say my dad more because my dad's probably like my best friend. Not to say anything bad about my mom, but my I don't really have these type of conversations with my mother. Because it's not going to work out. It's just easier to just have that with my father. So with my father, I definitely have told him, even while I was still in the church, I still wrestled with being agnostic then within the church, and we'd have conversations about it, and he was just open to listen. And I think that was the difference, is that I actually had a father that was open to listen. And my mom's even open to listen, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be Jesus this, Jesus that. And that's not, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just think that there's certain people I can have those conversations with, and my mom's not one of those. And with my father, having that conversation gets easier because we had the first one where we argued, and then now it's just kind of more like an intellectual conversation. So I'd probably say the best thing for you, which is kind of like I did when I was a minister to the congregation. I still believe this rule even to this day. I don't try to take anybody's God or Jesus away from them, period. Everybody has the right to believe what they want to believe. I do a good job of asking questions to help people understand what they believe, but I'm never going to tell anybody what they believe. But I also want them to respect me and how I believe it. But I probably dumb down what I say to people so that I don't give them a heart attack of what I believe. And so with your parents, that might be the best thing to do, is that you don't necessarily have to say, hey, I'm this, but you can definitely think of more simpler ways to just start the conversation to see how that goes first. And then from there, maybe go further.
I love that. Thanks for that. Also, Malia had to step out, but she wanted to tell you she was grateful that you're here too, Eric. Okay, I just found out he was an 8 the other day. I already knew he and I were friends and I liked him and we shared some energy, but I just need y'all to know I didn't know he was an 8, and it just made me all the happier. Okay, any other questions, comments? Yes, Leah.
So I don't think you mentioned this yet. If you did, please forgive me, but what is it that you do within government? Was it an elected position you had to run for, or did you apply? Like, how did you get into that, and what is it that you do?
Okay. So I actually am an elected official for the state Democratic Party. I'm an executive committee member. I don't necessarily talk about that because it's not really that big of a deal to me, but that's actually not what I do. What I do is I actually work for the mayor, Mayor Cooper in Nashville, and I'm a senior policy analyst. And what I do is right now is I'm working and I'm helping with another gentleman named John Button, working with the use of force policies, especially after the civil unrest that happened after George Floyd was murdered. And then I also am working with the search for the next chief of police in those pieces, which is a place that I believe I'm supposed to be at, but it's also a weird place to be at because I'm no longer seen as a community organizer. I'm seen as the institution. I'm seen as the state. And so people that might know the work that you have done are very quick to forget it because now you look like the man to them. I still know what my views and my values are, and I bring them inside. But for a lot of people, I can easily be seen as this particular person that they don't remember that we still have the same values and missions. On top of that, I'm a Black man that has been beat up by the cops several times. So those lessons are not going to be forgetful to me. But the opposite side too is that I have a fine respect for police officers because my uncle was a policeman. I have several people that were police officers. My favorite uncle was a police officer. My wife's side of the family has many police officers. So I understand some of the hard jobs that they do. I understand that they're not always getting paid what they deserve here in Nashville. I think a policeman in an area where you need at least $60,000 to $70,000 to just be able to exist are making like maybe $48,000 starting out at most. And so I understand those issues. I also understand that police officers are given tasks that they should not have to actually do or not qualified to do. I don't think that many police are qualified to deal with somebody with mental health issues to where they might have an episode and the first thing they think is to grab a gun. When that person really just needs to have a social worker or somebody from crisis intervention deal with them. Sometimes they get calls to things that they shouldn't have. So I understand both of those sides. I still think for me, at the end of the day, I'm a person that lives in North Nashville. I know what it's like to be pulled over by the cops, for them to say something. This happened to me while I was still a preacher, a pastor. He literally pulled me over in front of my church, asked me where I was going. I told him I'm going into that building right there that you pulled me in front of. Said I had a broken tail light, which is always the word that's used. When I told him I was the assistant pastor to the church, he didn't believe me. Walked away from the car and then walked back and said, "What's the address?" I told him the address fully, 2708 Jefferson Street. He was still baffled. Gives me back my license. I walk into the church and I have a key to open the church and walk in. He's still baffled, not believing who I said I am. So for me, this is not about saying cops are bad. This is saying that everybody wants to be safe, regardless of what side of town they are, regardless of what color their skin is, regardless of whatever their sexual preference is, or what gender that they decide that they choose for themselves. This is more than that. So the conversations that we've had right now with the Policing Policy Commission, we've definitely had conversations with those who are Black, those who are from the immigrant community, New Americans, Latino community, those from the Muslim community, those from the trans community, to be able to talk about some of these issues that's going on. We've had people that are no longer cops that give the real deal experiences that's going on to be able to talk about it. And so it's a very vulnerable spot for me to be in, knowing who I am, knowing what I believe, but also understanding that I represent somebody else that is the mayor. And so it's not just me saying, "Hey, this is what I believe," and the mayor believes this. No, it's more of, this is what I believe. How do I also make sure that the mayor knows my perspective? But at the end of the day, the mayor has a decision of what they want to pick. But I do believe, for the fact that I'm there, it does help the mayor to have at least a different perspective, and maybe possibly give him the courage or the insight to know that this is the right thing to do. How did I get into it? Again, it goes back to me needing a job, really, and then me still wanting to do justice work. And I just happened to luck up.
Thank you for that. Great question, Leah. So one of my questions was going to be, and you might have just answered it, but I'm wondering if you want to expand on it a little bit. If you had the ear of at least everyone in the Nashville area that would actually listen to you in a moment, what is it that you wish they would know? Is it, like you just said, that ultimately everyone wants to be safe, and that people don't obviously honor or respect that, much less understand that? Or is there more to it that you wished? I really want to say, like, everyone in America, if you had the ear of everyone in America, in this country, and they were actually listening, what would be your challenge to them?
I do want everybody to be safe. I think I also want everybody to understand what they're trying to work for. Also being a community organizer, and now also being a part of politics, what I realized with certain people, and I'm going to only talk about Nashville and not other places. There are not a lot of organizers that understand politics in Nashville. They understand what they believe, but they're not willing to go through the process to understand how policy is made or how people come up with decisions to make them. They also are not always sure about how to put things together. And so you have situations where people do have the right intentions, they just have the wrong process. And right does not get done through wrong processes, and you can't force that down people's throats. The second piece is that you need to always realize that you have allies in every different aspect of your life, regardless if you believe in that aspect. So if I am, and I don't know anybody's political affiliations, don't need to, but let's just say if I am Democrat, that does not mean that I should be an enemy to those who are Republicans if there is an opportunity to help out my community. And I think with our country right now, we're so divisive that we can't even be honest with ourselves to say that maybe somebody on the other side has a good way for us to work together to be helpful, because we're so worried about being in gangs. And truthfully, that's what this is. Politics is like gangs to me right now. If y'all are familiar with Bloods and Crips, I almost feel like one side is Bloods, one side is Crips. And and both sides are trying to kill each other regardless if it's good. It's just the fact that you're on the side that I have to kill you. And I think that we have to do something about that. This is very annoying, and it's coming from a person that's very, very left and very liberal, that's just tired of not understanding common sense and practicality. One, two, we have to be okay with sitting down with people from the other side to understand things. As a community organizer, I was always taught this. One, if you have a strategy, you understand what your end goal is, you understand that process, but one of the first steps of actually doing that work is that you have to be able to, one, sit down and talk to the group to say what your needs are. If they don't want to listen, then we go into more effective ways to make them listen and hear us. If that means banging on the door, kicking down the door, that's fine. But we at least have the conversation first. And what I'm realizing right now is people don't even want to have the conversations. They just want to automatically have assumptions and say, this is who you are, this is what you do, and this is why I must destroy you. And I think we're missing a lot of great opportunities. And so for me, if I know I can help out my community, and if I need to sit down with somebody to do that, I'm going to do that. But what I'm not going to do is say, hey, these are my views, these are what I believe, and if people on my side die, that's perfectly fine, long as you know that I'm right. It's almost no different than what somebody told me with my wife. I can either be right or I can be in a relationship. And I think a lot of people are so worried about being right that we're killing a lot of different relationships. So I'd probably stop there.
That was worth its weight in gold. That was so good. I'm watching the gallery and everyone's nodding. Thank you for that. So much wisdom in that. Anyone else? I have two more questions I want to ask him, but if anyone else has any other commentary or questions, please know that this is your opportunity to chime in.
Yeah, I was just going to ask one more. Sorry. It was around, like, let's project forward 5-10 years from now. Like, what is the justice issue that you want to go and tackle that you haven't necessarily been able to address as of yet?
Economic disparities, wage gap. North Nashville, one thing that bothers me is that, we're in a food desert. So you don't always get the quality food that you want. And if you don't have a car, you may not get there like you need. And so you're stuck with these corner stores that's serving processed food, that's continuing diabetes, all these different things. As a person that just reverses diabetes, or causing heart attacks, stress, or even just thinking about the environmental issues that's going on in my neighborhood, to where people have asthma. We can go down for days. Chemical landfills, all these different things are being dumped into the area. So for me, I would like to see a way to so my overall goal of what I always say is I'd love to make North Nashville an international model of what a community should look like. And for me, I'm really a strong advocate for small business, independent business. And so I'm really about seeing people become entrepreneurs, definitely being able to grow their business, but also be able to be able to hire people and give them the fair wage or living wage that they deserve, get the benefits that they need. Talk about the education systems, the parks, all these different things, so that people can actually be creative beings. And and this goes back to the safety piece, just thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. First, you got to get out of survival mode, and then you got to be able to put yourself in such a way that you can finally get to that top piece of the pyramid, to where you can actually be a creative being. And a lot of people are not living up to the potential or the purpose that they have because they don't feel safe, and they're not able to have that. They're not able to get out of survival mode to do that. So for me, I would like to really find ways to, I don't know if it's a financial district, if it's maybe the way that the neighborhoods need to be shaped and formed to where people can be more close-knit, be able to walk their areas, but some way to really create a community to where people see people as neighbors and people again, able to work with each other and are actually able to create the communities that I see. I see it in Green Hills sometimes. I see it in Bellmead area, to where, you know, people can have these PTAs, these PTO organizations, but people over here that may not have the money to do that, or have the public schools that actually are quality public schools because they're given the resources to do that. You just see all these different disparity issues. And so even now in a pandemic, we're seeing that billionaires are becoming trillionaires, and we're seeing people that at least had a little bit of money have no money, or worse than that. I would just like to find a way that we can really do something about that gap to make that happen. So I hope that answers your question, Nathan.
Perfect. Thank you.
So good. Okay, last two questions, Eric. One more serious than the other, but the more serious one, what is giving you hope in this moment? Or who? It can be a who too.
The next generation that I do not know, I have not seen, they have not been birthed. I think even during this time of stress, trauma, pain, I still think our contribution is the next generation, making sure that they're here to be able to make things happen. So I still believe in the ancestors. I still believe in descendants. I think it's just our job to make sure the descendants can come and hopefully clean up a lot of our mess. So I still have my hope in them.
I love that. Okay, another fun question we've been asking our guests. What's your fave food and drink?
I actually cannot drink anymore, but when I did, it was tequila and scotch. As far as favorite food, I cannot eat that as much as I like to. It will probably be hamburgers, pizza. I definitely love sub sandwiches. If I can find any place, and I'm not talking Subway, but if I can literally find a place, that a butcher shop or anything like that, they can just make a great sub sandwich, I would eat them forever. So that's probably my favorite food and drinks. Until then,
Great.
water. So I drink a lot of water.
We all need to be drinking more water, so that's a good example for us. Okay, so the new book, Weekend Reflections. Tell them how they can find it and how they can get in touch with you to post this.
All right, so I'll do one thing. I'll make sure to put the link in the chat. But if you want to find me on social media, my social media is Eric E. Brown Jr. And that's either on IG or on Instagram or Facebook. My website is the same thing, www.ericebrownjr.com. And to find the book, you can find the book at Amazon. I think it's out right now, but I'm working on that. You can get it at Parnassus Bookstore. You can get it at Barnes & Nobles. I think Brookline Bookstore. And then a Keyline here in Nashville. But really, you can just look up the words Weekend Reflections, Eric E. Brown Jr. And bookstores are carrying it. So like I said, what I'll do in a second is I'll put in the chat box so that you'll have that link.
Great. And I want y'all to know, in lieu of an honorarium, Eric chose that we purchase, we're going to purchase 5 of his books and give them away. So just know that that's coming too. And we're so grateful to have you, Eric. Thank you for this time. I feel like we could have gone on with, again, all that you've not only experienced, but all that you do and the ways that you're involved in this community. But we're definitely for the better for it, for spending this time with you. And we hope you'll come back around and we can work together again, officially and unofficially, to have some fun when COVID passes and we can all actually be face to face again. So a big thank you to Eric. Obviously, I know we would give you a rousing standing ovation if we were with you.
Thank you.
The only other things I want to tell us, just by way of announcements in the email tomorrow, it's our community email that comes out tomorrow morning. If you're not on our email list, we send out an email every Monday in the rhythm of mind, body, soul, community, and once a quarter delight emails. And so tomorrow's email is over community. And I have given us the gathering dates for the rest of the year, the happy hour dates for the rest of the year. We have book club. We had a great first book club. We were reading See No Stranger by Valerie Carr and had a lovely, great conversation. There's the book, See No Stranger. So we'll have one more of those November 2nd. That's the only thing else coming up. And then details, Winter Song. We're still working on the possibility of doing some kind of version of Winter Song. So know that's coming. And our Winter Coat project will also kick off in November. So be looking for that. That's the way that we fundraise and raise money to literally buy and purchase coats for underprivileged kids in the community in Nashville. So look for details about that. I don't think I'm missing anything, right? Nathan covering, someone always jumps in if I have missed anything. Okay, we'll end with our toast then. So if you have water or wine or whatever your privilege, or your, not your privilege, your preference. So today I just want to come back around to a toast to gravity and grace, to gravity, to that which keeps us grounded. And conversations like this keep us grounded. They remind us of our connection to each other, and again, to the human family, and to the beauty and resilience of the human spirit, and also to the strength. Like, I'm so reminded in Eric's story of strength, and the strength that we have, and where we choose to put our intentions and our power, and where we use our voice. And so to gravity first, and then to grace. And that's just to that which will keep us thankful. Grateful for each other, grateful for the opportunity to hear from one another, grateful for the opportunity to lean in and further connect. And I hope opportunities like today in this gathering challenge you to continue to push in, not only to understanding who we are as individuals, but who everyone else is, and how else we can help and be responsible to each other, and to the city, and to this world. So to gravity and grace and all of you. Cheers. Thank you again, Eric. Thank you all for being here. Caleb, we hope you'll come back too. We're so glad you joined us. I know you can't talk back, but and everyone else, we hope to see you again soon. All right, have a great week.